Yo, what's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be doing my Week 6 NFL recap and review. We're going to recap the NFL slate for Week 6 on Draftkings. We're going to talk through the picks that I gave out in my video that I upload every Thursday, my full picks video where I give about 10 to 12 plays that I like for this upcoming slate. We're going to look at those, see how those picks did. For those of you that watch my picks videos every week, I do really appreciate that. Always want to be as transparent with you guys as possible. So we're going to take a look at how my picks did. Then we're going to go over to my lineups and look at some of the lineups that I played. Mainly my cash game lineup, talk through that, talk through my process. We will also take a look at the 3 GPP lineups that I played in 3 max contest. We'll take a look at those lineups as well. Just before we do get started with the recap, guys, I would definitely appreciate it if you would drop a like on this video. Let me know down in the comments how your Week 6 went. Overall for me, as we'll get on in the video and you'll see, it wasn't the best week for me. I did make some mistakes this week. Let me know if you made some mistakes. Getting on Malcolm Brown, once the Todd Gurley news came out that Todd Gurley was going to be out, that was one of the big mistakes that I made this week. Malcolm Brown with only like 4.5 DraftKings points. Didn't have that great of a game, but we'll talk through my lineups once we get there, and I'll show you guys who I played this week. But if you are new to the channel, definitely would appreciate it if you guys would click that subscribe button, click the notification bell as well, so that way you get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on a new video. Always appreciate you guys subscribing and turning on notifications. It really does mean a lot to me, to this channel, trying to grow this channel as much as I can. But we're going to start off and look at the picks that I gave out in my video, my Thursday video. So I gave out 10 plays this week. It wasn't the greatest week, honestly. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I had 3 pretty good picks and then 7 just kind of really bad picks. I mean, I would say two of the 7 bad picks weren't really that bad. Leonard Fournette, Adam Thielen weren't that bad, but the other 5 plays definitely were not great. On the good side, though, I did have 3 really good plays that we'll talk about. Starting off with the good side, I gave 2 quarterbacks this week. I gave 1 expensive quarterback that I like and then 1 value quarterback. So the expensive quarterback I like this week with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson continues to be a quarterback that I just always am trying to pay up for, especially when he's in the right matchup. And I really like this matchup for him against a Kansas City team that we know is going to put up points offensively, going to force the Texans to throw a lot. The KC defense has just not been that good this year. Teams are putting up points on KC pretty easily. This game had one of the highest totals on the slate. I thought Deshaun Watson was one of the highest upside quarterbacks on the board. He was definitely a quarterback I wanted to pay up for. 31.4 DraftKings points. I believe he was one of the highest scoring quarterbacks on the slate, so that was a really good play. The other quarterback that I gave, though, was Gardner Minshew. And Gardner Minshew was just really, really disappointing. I watched a lot of that Saints-Jaguars game. He just didn't have a lot of time to throw. He was missing receivers. I don't think the Saints really threw the ball that much in general. They didn't score an offensive touchdown. I don't even think they got into the end zone. I believe they lost like 13-6. It was just not a great game from the Jaguars. Gardner Minshew was a big disappointment. Only 5 DraftKings points. Was definitely a bad play. At only 5K, I wouldn't necessarily say that was a bad play. You could argue that the matchup wasn't great against the Saints. Saints do have a somewhat tough defense, but Minshew had just been so consistent. He was playing so well, going back home, and for only 5K on DraftKings, you really didn't need much from him to pay off that salary. He did have a floor game, like worst possible game for Minshew, which obviously sucks, but I'd probably play him again in this spot, especially at that price tag that he was on DraftKings. You could argue that Kirk Cousins was a better play for only 200 more against a bad Eagles secondary and a bad Eagles pass defense. But I still did like Minshew a lot as a value play, just didn't work out. But now looking at the running back plays I gave out 3 running backs that I was on. One of the good running backs I did play this week was David Johnson. Even with the news that he was going to be questionable this week, or that he was questionable this week, he did have a little bit of a back injury. Even with the news that he was questionable, we did get about, I believe it was Friday night or Saturday, that David Johnson was expected to play. People got off of him. I was very surprised how low owned he was. I was not expecting him to be that low owned. I thought people were going to be on David Johnson, especially given the matchup against the Falcons, a Falcons team that we know throughout the past has always struggled against pass-catching running backs. I thought David Johnson was going to be pretty popular this week, but that was not the case. He was very low owned. 28.2 DraftKings points, had a really good game. I did play David Johnson in cash, which was one of the things that kind of went well for me. I was going to get off of him because I was a bit concerned with the injury, but reading just reports, it looked like he was fine. There was really nothing major. He was going to be full go, so stuck with David Johnson in my main lineup, which worked out. 28.2 DraftKings points, had a really solid day. I believe he had like 60 rushing yards, did have a rushing touchdown. He did a lot of his damage through the air, though, which is where I thought he was going to be able to do his damage against his Falcons team. I know he had a receiving touchdown. I think he had like 70 or 80 receiving yards. Just overall solid day from David Johnson. So 28.2 DraftKings points. He was a good play at the running back spot. But then I gave two other running back plays in that 6K range that I liked, Leonard Fournette and Le'Veon Bell. You could argue that Leonard Fournette was not a bad play, getting you 17.8 DraftKings points on this slate. This wasn't a slate where we had like a lot of chalk plays crushed like we did last week. Austin Hooper was very popular and he smashed, but that was really it. Like there was no crazy high-owned plays that like went off besides Austin Hooper. So 17.8 from Leonard Fournette honestly wasn't that bad. He got a ton of work like I expected him to. Got a ton of carries. He was involved in the passing game. Leonard Fournette's just going to continue to be a guy that I play, especially if he continues to be under 7K. I just see so much volume. If he would have gotten to the end zone, he would have been a smash play. Didn't get into the end zone, but still managed to get 17.8 DraftKings points just on yards, receptions alone. So Leonard Fournette, not necessarily a bad play, but not a crazy good play either. We'll just keep him on the bad side for now. But the next running back I did give out was Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell, honestly, lucky to get 12.3 DraftKings points out of him. He was not very efficient at all through the ground. He was getting like 2-3 yards a carry. Wasn't doing much offensively. He didn't get a ton of work in the passing game either. The Jets actually were able to win this game, which I was very surprised. They were able to beat the Cowboys, and they did have a lead for a lot of this game. I'm not sure how many carries Bell got total, but I know he didn't. Or I was watching some of that game. He just wasn't getting a lot of yards per carry. He'd get like 2 yards, maybe like a 1 yard catch. He just wasn't able to break any long runs. Luckily, though, he was able to get a short rushing touchdown, which kind of salvaged his day, kept him from being a terrible play. 12.3 DraftKings points out of Le'Veon Bell was definitely not good for 6,400. I know he was very high owned in cash, so that really didn't kill you, but in tournaments, getting 12.3 from Le'Veon Bell is not going to help you win a GPP, so definitely that was a play I missed on quite a bit. Just wasn't very efficient. I don't think Le'Veon Bell, rest of season, is going to be a very efficient running back. It's just that the volume is there. He sees so much volume through the air, gets so much work in the passing game. He's going to see so many carries that just makes him viable on pretty much a week-to-week basis. Same could be said for Leonard Fournette. But now looking at receiver plays, I did give 3 receiver plays. All of them were, besides Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, DJ Shark were big disappointments. Adam Thielen for 17.7 DraftKings points wasn't necessarily a bad play, but I believe he was 6,700. Getting 17 DK points from a $6,700 receiver, that's not really going to help you win anything. So I would say that Thielen was definitely on the bad side rather than the good side if I had to choose one. I really like the matchup, though, for Thielen against the Eagles. That Eagles secondary is just so bad. Stephon Diggs had a monster day, went for like 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. Obviously, if some of that production goes to Adam Thielen, then Thielen's going to be much better. I think Thielen finished with like 60 yards and a touchdown, like 4 catches, 60 yards and a touchdown, something like that. I believe he did get a touchdown on the opening drive, but then after that, it didn't really do much. It was kind of the Stephon Diggs show after that. Adam Thielen, probably a play I would play again, even though he only got 17 DK points. I don't feel like that was a bad play, like process-wise. Really like the matchup. It's just kind of Stephon Diggs went off, so Thielen didn't get to do much late in that game. But the next guy was Robert Woods, 7.6 DraftKings points. Overall, the Rams as an offense were just terrible this week. They didn't do much against the 49ers defense. The 49ers were stuffing them on every play when they tried to run the ball. When Jared Goff dropped back to throw, he didn't have any time to throw. The 49ers were getting a ton of pressure on Jared Goff. I don't even think he threw for over 100 yards. That's how bad of a day he had. So, like, all the Rams receivers were terrible this week. Robert Woods, luckily, though, got a end-around rushing touchdown on the opening drive, which kind of salvaged his day. I'm pretty sure he got 7 DraftKings points to start off the game and then literally didn't do nothing after that. On the first drive, he got 7 DraftKings points, and then literally the rest of the game didn't catch a single pass. So that was disappointing. I thought Robert Woods was going to be in for a big day after getting that rushing touchdown on the first drive, and then after that, it just really didn't do much. So Even at 5,600, I'd probably still play Robert Woods again at that price, even in the tough matchup. I would say this was like a floor game for the Rams offense. Like, rarely is Jared Goff going to throw for less than 100 yards on a given or on any game. So Robert Woods necessarily wasn't a bad process play, just a play that kind of didn't work out. Not on the right side of variance, I guess you could say. But the last receiver I gave out was DJ Shark. DJ Shark was someone I was a bit iffy on. It was definitely a tough matchup for him, getting shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore, who is a very solid corner. But when the Jaguars offense only puts up 6 points when Gardner Minshew throws for like 100 yards, obviously these Jaguars receivers are not going to do well. Like, none of the Jaguars receivers did well. Dede Westbrook didn't have that great of a game. Shark didn't have that great of a game. I was just pretty high on the Jaguars offense in general this week, and when they only put up 6 points, that's usually not going to be a good sign. DJ Shark at 5,500, I'd probably play him again at that price tag. If he was up to like 6,500, 7K, I wouldn't have had much interest in him, but for only 5,500, for how many targets he's seeing per week, even in the tough matchup, he is clearly the guy that Gardner Minshew's looking to. I know Shark still got a lot of targets, even though he only put up 7 DraftKings points. I believe he got like 7 or 8 targets. So I'd probably play Shark again at his price. One of those plays that just kind of didn't work out, was on the wrong side of variance, I guess you could say. Just a really bad game in general from the Jaguars offense, kind of similar to the Rams. But lastly, we're going to look at tight end and defense. So I gave 1 tight end pick and 1 defense pick. For tight end, I was on Austin Hooper, who smashed versus the Cardinals. This was a pretty clear play for me. He was the highest tight end on the board by a pretty wide margin. Once we got the news that George Kittle was going to be limited, which he really wasn't limited, but once we got the news George Kittle was going to be limited, I pretty much pivoted all my Kittle exposure over to Austin Hooper. I had Austin Hooper in my cash game lineup pretty much all week. I knew he was going to be the guy that I wanted. This Cardinals team just getting killed by tight ends. Austin Hooper's been involved in the Falcons offense pretty heavily this year, seeing a ton of targets. He had a monster game, like 6 catches, 7 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Really good game from Austin Hooper. Definitely came through with 28.7 DraftKings points for only 5K. That was probably the best tight end play on the board, points per dollar wise. But the defense play that I gave out was the Jets defense. They just really didn't do much defensively. I was watching that game. They weren't able to force any turnovers. I believe they only got 1 sack. They did allow 22 points to the Cowboys offense. The Cowboys were missing 2 of their starting offensive linemen, so I thought this was a pretty sharp play for only 1,500. It would be totally different if the Jets were like 3K, if they were priced up. But when you're getting a defense for 1,500 at home against a team that's missing 2 of their starting offensive linemen, I honestly thought it was a pretty good spot for the Jets defense. I thought they'd be able to get some pressure on Dak, force some turnovers. They weren't able to do so, only finished the game with 1 sack, didn't get any picks or any fumbles, which kind of sucks. But for only 1,500, especially in cash games, I'd play the Jets defense again. They were the highest owned defense in cash in the $10 single entry double up. The Jets defense was like 50% owned. So all the sharp players were on them. I think it was definitely a smart play to go to, especially in cash. I did go pretty heavy on the Jets D in tournaments, which was not the way to go. But still, $1,500 for a defense. It's going to be very interesting to see if DraftKings continues to price defense below $2,000. If we get cheap defenses at home, like next week. I haven't looked at the Week 7 slate. That'll be very interesting to see. But either way, Jets defense didn't work out, only 1 DraftKings point, but for 1,500, they really didn't kill you. I don't think any defense like crushed this week. I know the Broncos had like 20 or 22, but no defense like went off for like 35, 40 like we've seen happen the past few weeks. But these were the 10 picks that I gave out in my Week 6 video on Thursday. 3 good picks, 7 bad picks. Wasn't the best week. We will definitely improve next week and try and get better. But now we're going to take a look at my lineups real quick before we end this video. So looking at my cash game lineup, this was the lineup that I played in pretty much all my contests. This was my main lineup where a lot of my action went. So I had Deshaun Watson at quarterback. He was not a guy that I was planning on paying up for. Usually I always go cheap. I originally was going to play Gardner Minshew as my cash game quarterback. But once we got the Todd Gurley news that Todd Gurley was going to be out, I thought Malcolm Brown for only 4,300 became a very strong cash game play. It was very disappointing that he started off the game with 40 yards and then literally didn't do anything after that. Pretty similar to Robert Woods. Woods and Brown both had, Brown after the first drive had 4 DraftKings points. Woods after the first drive had 7 DK points. And then both guys literally didn't do anything after that, which was very disappointing. But Watson, I paid up for Watson in cash and stacked him with DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins I thought was a pretty strong play at the top of the receiver pool, and I wasn't going to pay up for him to begin the week. But like I said, this Malcolm Brown, or the Todd Gurley news opening up Malcolm Brown just kind of allowed me to do a lot more at receiver, allowed me to pay up for 2 running backs, chose to pay up for David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell. Probably would have been smarter to play Leonard Fournette over David Johnson because looking at a lot of the sharp players' lineups, they did go Leonard Fournette over David Johnson. But I still like David Johnson, even though he was low-owned, even though people got off of him. I thought this was a really good matchup. And that was the play that kind of salvaged my day. If David Johnson would have had like maybe 10 less points, that probably would have killed me this week. So David Johnson going for 28 really helped me in cash, especially because he was low-owned, which was very surprising to me. But then I had Malcolm Brown, who I thought was a clear cash game play this week, even though it didn't work out. Getting a running back for 4,300 that's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times. I know Malcolm Brown didn't touch the ball 15 to 20 times, but most people would expect him to in a game where he takes over for Todd Gurley. Game script kind of forced him out of that role. They played a lot of Darrell Henderson in the second half. They used Darrell Henderson in the pass game. I knew Malcolm Brown wasn't going to be using the pass game much, but I thought just getting 15 carries alone would be enough value for him to pay off that price tag. Wasn't the greatest day, or wasn't the greatest game for Malcolm Brown. Didn't come through, only 4 DraftKings points, but in cash I thought that was the right play. Then a receiver, I went with Robert Woods and DJ Shark, who I thought were both pretty strong plays in that mid-range. Woods just a guy that continues to see a ton of volume. No, it didn't come through this week, but he's just continuing to see 8 to 10 targets just about every week. For only 5,600, thought Robert Woods was pretty strong. DJ Shark, another guy that's just seeing a lot of volume and was underpriced, so roll with him as my wide receiver 3. Austin Hooper I thought was the clear tight end play this week, so I went with him in cash. Le'Veon Bell I thought was a clear cash game play at running back. Just so much volume. For only 6,400, he was definitely the running back I wanted to go to in cash. It was pretty clear that I was going to play Brown and Bell. It was just who was going to be my other running back. Was I going to go with Leonard Fournette or David Johnson, and ultimately winded up on David Johnson. But then lastly, I played Jets D in cash, which was definitely the right play in my opinion for only 1,500. Even though they only put up 1 DraftKings point, getting a $1,500 defense is going to allow you to pay up for so much more at other positions. So that's where I went in cash, finished with 137. Was able to pretty much bubble all like double ups and stuff. I was barely able to squeak in to double ups. Was able to break even on my cash lineup, but my 3 GPP lineups were pretty bad. Had a 98, 139, and 106. The 139 lineup was looking pretty good after the 1 o'clock games, but then once the 4 o'clock game started, that 139 lineup just kind of started to fall off. But we'll take a look at these 3 GPP lineups real quick. So in my first GPP lineup, I had a Patrick Mahomes lineup, stacked him with Travis Kelce, and then I ran it back with Kiki Kuti. Had Dalvin Cook, David Johnson, Robert Woods, Mohamed Sanu, Malcolm Brown, and the Jets defense in this lineup. My GPP 2 lineup, I had Kirk Cousins stacked with Adam Thielen, and then I ran it back with Zach Ertz. Had Leonard Fournette and Michael Thomas in the same game. Had Chris Carson at running back, Preston Williams as a receiver option, Le'Veon Bell in the flex, and then Jets D in this lineup as well. And then my third lineup was a Gardner Minshew to DJ Shark stack, and then I ran it back with Alvin Kamara. Had DeAndre Hopkins, Mark Ingram, Mohamed Sanu, Austin Hooper, Le'Veon Bell, and Jets defense. So this was a week where I was able to break even in cash, but in GPPs I got completely dusted. I didn't cash any of my GPP lineups, which really sucks. If I would have cashed my GPP lineups, I would have had a much better week. But looking at my week 6 review, just my week 6 in general, we definitely made some mistakes this week. I did take an L, did take a loss this week. I was able to break even with my main cash game lineup, like I said, but I did brick out on my 3 GPP teams. None of my GPP teams cashed. That's pretty much what kept me from making a profit this week. Adjusting to the Todd Gurley news and getting on Malcolm Brown was ultimately what cost me. Did come back to bite me, but for cash games, I felt like that was the right play. I felt like that was the way to go for cash. I could have pretty much faded him in GPPs, which probably would have been the smart route to go. But for cash games, getting on Malcolm Brown I thought was the right play, even though it didn't work out. If I would have stayed off of Brown, then that probably would have kept me, or I probably would have had a profitable week if I wouldn't have got on him. But a lot of the sharps were on him. I thought it was a pretty smart play in general. Being able to bubble in my double ups though in my main lineup which is what kept me from pretty much getting dusted today. I was able to squeak in the double ups with the 137. I did miss some double ups, like I know a couple $5, $10 entries didn't squeak in, but if I was able to not squeak into those double ups, it probably would have been a much worse week. So barely getting into those was what helped me this week and pretty much kept me from getting completely dusted. Was at least able to get some money back, but definitely got to get better for week 7. I like to make these recap videos, these review videos to see where I went wrong, see your guys' comments, just kind of talk about this slate, see where we went wrong to where we can improve for next week. Try and make less mistakes. Get better about analyzing those chalky plays like Malcolm Brown. See if it's good chalk or bad chalk. I thought Malcolm Brown was good chalk this week. Looking at it in hindsight, maybe he was bad chalk just because of how he's not involved in the passing game, and having a Draftkings running back that's not involved in the passing game is pretty thin for cash, but again, for 4,300, what can you do? But yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I do really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. You'll notice on the screen, I got my most recent video popping up on the screen along with my logo. You can click that recent video to watch that, or you can subscribe to the channel by clicking my logo. I would appreciate it. Feel free to leave any comments, any questions down below in the comment section. Give any feedback. Let me know how your week 6 went. Always feel free to leave any comments, but thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it, and good luck this week for week 7. Peace.